But if you look at the number of sales month after month, like it's kind of stable. I was scared to see the other way. I was scared to see, February, March, April. Right? That's what I scared of.
Welcome to another episode of Real Talk. We talk about all things real estate related, and joining me today, we have Truman Chen from the Bay Street Integrity Group. And Truman, thank you very much for being here today.
You're very good.
Don't worry, don't get nervous. It's just a casual talk because I love talking about real estate with my friends and just finding out what is happening, what are the things that's going through your mind right now. First of all, we all know that we have finished our federal election. Has that changed the mood of the market?
Well, I honestly, I don't think that matters much right now. I think what matters is today, Mark Carney right now in the United States talking to Donald Trump. I think that's the biggest thing right now. Apparently, I did know that when Donald Trump had the inauguration in January 20, and since then, and the market is really, at least in Toronto, we see it just going down and down. But recently, Donald Trump become a little bit quiet recently about the tariff, and I did see at the end of April, we do see the market is the showing activity is still very low, but at least people start buying, right? And today we just saw the latest Toronto trend number, and April sales still higher than March, right? Even though it's
Year
much
to
lower.
year,
Year to year it's lower down, right? But at least we still keeping a trend that February, March, April. Because I was really scared at the beginning of April. I was scared to see the other way. I was scared to see February, March, April. Right? That's what I scared of. But it turned out, I think that once the uncertainty start getting removed a little bit, people start buying again.
Okay, so let's put into context here. We're talking about the TREP, Toronto Real Estate Board numbers that established entire April. And April, we had the election, okay, on the 28th. So basically, for the better part of April, people were under the shadow of the election. People were under shadow of, more importantly, of what you have said is, who's going to go against Trump? And first, does it matter? Yes, it does. And does it really matter in terms of how it affects your daily lives? It may or may not.
May not.
But it's more of a psychological.
Yeah.
And even with that as the backdrop, still, the transactions was still fairly, I think it's decent. And I agree with you, is that I didn't want to see a sharp dive. Okay?
Yeah. Well, I do see the showing activity, right? That's actually even you mentioned that I have every week I have my live streaming, right? I talk about throughout the April. I said I see about 50% drop in the showing activity, but I only see 20% drop into the sales. That means people who still buying, they are buying, right? Like they are that's not surprising, because I'm not surprised because whoever still buy, right? They're not investor, they are end user. There's always need for real estate, right? No matter how bad the market is, there's always people that they need a home. They don't care about if the price go up, 20%, down 20%, but they need a home to stay, right? And that's what's driving the market, right?
Yeah, the way I explain to my wife is that it's like driving a car, and we all look at the price of gas. And I told her, honey, we have to drive, and if I'm running on empty, I need to fill out. If it's $1.30, $1.40, $1.20, I need to gas and fill up. So it is a real need, and I think that's what you point to, is that the need for real estate, it is different from the viewpoint of investment. Investment is a different mindset, is a different way of looking at the metrics. And what I saw in the numbers is that the people actually go out and look at houses and that does attend the showings, they are really more serious than ever.
Exactly.
Because we call it the kill rate, the conversion rate of how many showings until you actually get a firm offer. It's pretty solid numbers.
It's pretty solid, and the resilience of the price in this market, it was quite strong, right? Like if you look at whenever you talk to someone and say how's the market, we always say, oh, the market is really bad, but we're talking about the volume, the sales volume, right? Because I even Monday, I was doing the sales call for all my agent. Every 2 weeks, I have a sales call for all of my agent, and I showed them the number, 2021, right? So the February 2021, we had 11,000 sales, and this year we have 4,000, so about one third. And March, 15,600, and this year 5,000, one third, right? And the trend going, and now we're looking at the same thing, right? Like the April will be the same. So yeah, the volume.
We're just a little bit shy of 5,000, 4,000.
Yeah, well, a little bit more than that. I think this month I believe is like 5,600,
Okay.
5,600 for you. But that's why it's higher than 5,000 last month, right? So yeah, the sales volume dropped a lot. But if you look at the price, right? You look at the price month over month, and you were surprised that with that low, sales volume, with that low sale to new listing ratio, right? That's what's very concerning. Look at the sale to new listing ratio, would never be this low, right? Would never be this low. But the price is kind of it's going down, but it going down very slowly.
It's very little.
Yeah, very little. Yeah,
It's less than 1%
yeah.
change.
You see people on the internet, they will post like, "Oh, this person bought, like 3 million, now he sold at 2.1." You see that post all the time, but that's just like another one-off thing, right? But you really look at the stat, you look at the average price, it never go like that. And also, one interesting thing is, we feel after 2022, we feel the market actually getting worse every year, because as a salesperson, I feel that my transaction volume is going down. But if you look at the price today, the average price is actually higher than July 2022, because at that time the market got panicked, they really dropped down. But then remember the early 2023, there was a little come back up, right? And then it come back down again, but it would never really down to that point, because if I look at the bottom compared to the peak of 2022, that was I like a water market is 28%, right? For example, for 416 detached home, but now we're like about 24%, right? So we're still not hit the worst yet. So I'm really surprised with.
I think we have passed the worst. I think we're actually on trajectory of recovery, and I think the mindset of a lot of buyers, they are actually coming around, and they are trying to get back in market. But then the unfortunate thing is that there are people, like you said, that will keep posts, and they will shout and scream about the outliers, the extreme case. And I think that is more so for people who want to, if you're on a YouTube platform or in a social media platform, you want to sensationalize to catch the eyeballs, so people
that gave you followers, that gave you viewers, that's
not really followers, just the viewers. It's the clicks. But that's the that is unfortunate, because it is missed news. It is not really the true story behind it, and it's not telling all the viewers all the dynamics of the supply and demand.
And then also, I think when people making because censorship, that was you said, like sensationalize, the thing. Like for example, we always see a title like, "Oh, the price gonna drop another 20, 30, 40%," and I always, ask my viewers, I say, "Okay, what if the price dropped 20%? I say you have this condo right now, $500,000, now like $400,000. How many people here want to buy?" Everyone with their hand, right? That's the thing, right? Like, yeah, the market is bad, but you have to really look at the historical data. That there was bad time throughout history, right? And we have seen what happened, right? Even now we're talking about tariff, right? So what is the tariff the state 25% for Canada? It's gonna permanently hurt our economy, but how much it hurt? Actually, based on economists' estimate, it's about 6%, permanently 6%. But you think about this, right? But that's not the end of the world. It's bad. It's really bad for us. We're gonna be in a recession. People are gonna lose jobs. People are gonna suffer. But it's not doomsday. It's not like, oh, the end of the world. 6%, we can still survive. As Canada, we still survive, right? So I think that's why, when in terms of people, if you're an investor or you just buying for your own, right? You have to kind of separate like, what do people, trying to, getting attention versus they give you good advice.
Well, I think definitely, And I've seen it and I've heard about it when we did our CNBC analysts coming here to talk about what's happening in the marketplace, the market outlook, and also the RBC specialists. We got BMO specialists. We bring a lot of these, let's call it specialists, into the forum here at Unionville to allow our buyers and our agents to learn about what's happening in the marketplace earlier this year. And the forecast again is this tariff is not an ongoing thing. Okay. And the reality is that I see some of my friends down in the south, and my sisters in the south, in US, in Boston, is that they're seeing their cost of living rising.
Yeah.
When they go to Walmart, they're seeing the things that they could buy with the same amount of budget. It is shrinking and is shrinking. The people in the Midwest, who are the farmers, they're being hurt by all the agricultural goods and the supplies and the stockpiling that happened at the shores in LA. It will only last for another 2 months. Then you'll run out of supply.
Exactly, and that's exactly the point that I totally believe what they're saying. And just last week I posted a new post exactly about that situation. So I don't think that the tariff going to stay as what we're talking about right now, right? And we haven't seen the word. You talking about the shortage going like coming, right? That's exactly the same case. So what I did this week, I wrote an article. I look at the maritime map. Basically, you see all the ship going everywhere, right? And look at all the ports globally, right? And like for example, in the United States, the biggest port is the port of Los Angeles, and second one is the port of Long Beach. But they're together. You can see them together as one big port, right? Yeah. But they're number one, number two, and then it's number three. That's in New York, right? And if you look at the historical data, right? Shanghai, Port of Shanghai is about 2.5 times more volume than the Long Beach and Port of Los Angeles combined. But now, if you look at how many ships, like the cargo ships, are actually there versus what's around Shanghai, it's completely different. The map in Shanghai is like the ship is like it's so dense, like everything's moving, but there's just so little ship, like so few ships right now in Port of Los Angeles. And also another thing I compared Vancouver and them, because typically they have every year they have about 5 times volume than Vancouver. But now Vancouver, I've been watching for a couple of days in this month in April, and most of the day Vancouver about double the ship. They were supposed to be 1/5, but they're double the cargo ship in Vancouver than Port of Los Angeles right now. And that's just my observation, but the CEO of Port of Los Angeles last week, he came out, he said, well, that's not the worst yet, because this week they're gonna see another 35% drop because some sort of the tariff gonna kick in. So this month they're gonna have another 35% less ship than before. And they haven't seen the problem in Walmart yet, because a lot of the supplier, a lot of distributor, they bought upfront. They front ran Donald Trump tariffs, so they still have a lot of stock in their warehouse. But that stock will run out by the end of May or June. They'll run out of products. So you're gonna start seeing what happened during the COVID. A lot of stores have like empty shelves. Exactly.
Shelves. Exactly. And the interesting thing is, for people who don't understand, is that a lot of the consumption of consumer goods happens during the summer months.
Yeah.
And then so during the summer, the busiest months for either domestic travels or vacationing, families, everything, that's when you consume a lot of goods. You consume a lot more packaged goods, you buy a lot of things ready to make, and you're running out of all these supplies. So it'll be interesting. And definitely, I for one think that this is sort of something that we will roll over, but definitely there is a lot of optimism from my point of view, because it allows a lot of industries to pivot and really change and start looking at things that is beyond the traditional. And I know in the construction industry, a lot of people are looking at other ways of constructing, other ways of engineering, so that we are less reliant on the states, and we are able to start looking at our other trading partners, whether it be in Europe or whether it be in Southeast Asia. And Southeast Asia, I'm not just talking about China, but the entire Southeast Asia the Five Dragons, that is really bringing a lot of opportunities. And those people can pivot, it's going to be really good. Now, I want to change the conversation to, let's talk about the first-time home buyers. Because that has always been something that has been forefront of a lot of conversations, especially with the new tax, the new incentives, talking about first-time home buyers. What is your take on the first-time home buyers?
Yeah, it was definitely they're even more important in this market than before. And people don't realize, a lot of people, I think, whenever they talk about real estate, I do talk to people always assume that, oh, there's a lot of investors. But actually, investors, traditionally, those mean about less than 20% of the Canadian buyer, right? It's almost half, usually it's about 45% buyer are first-time home buyers. So they are really kind of the most important driver for this market, for this market. And in this market today, it's more important because we're talking about the disappearance of all these investors, and people still buying these. They are the first-time buyer. And the good news is we do have more and more good news coming for first-time buyer, right? That right now, agent always asks me that, hey, what kind of incentive? My client asked me, I'm a first-time buyer, what incentive I have, right? I can just name a few, like you got this FHSA, the saving account, right? It's better than RSP. You can still use your RSP, have the home buyer plan to take the money out as a deposit, and you just have to return it. Like after, right?
That's about 80,000.
I think it's 60,000. I can't remember the number, but they could have increased that, right? But on top of that, we got the FHSA. The good thing about FHSA is we used to have an RSP and TFSA. The RSP basically you don't pay tax when you put the money in, but when you take the money out one day, you pay tax. TFSA is you pay tax first and you put the money in and you make the money whatever later on, you don't pay tax out. But FHSA, they take advantage of both worlds. You don't pay tax when you put the money in, they reduce your income of that year. But once you take that out to buy after 40,000 to buy your first property, you don't pay any tax either. It's only tax-free money from your income straight to your house, right? So that's very good. And we'll always have the first-time buyer, the land.
So when it's totally tax-free in terms of the income stream, $40,000, that is actually going to be zeroed out by your tax rate. Right?
Yeah, but the thing with this, because I have to pay the tax first, and then I put in the house. That I'm gonna make maybe $60,000, $70,000 depend on my income, right? But now only 40,000 come from my before tax income, right? So that's a great saving there. And every year, right now, first-time buyer, you got a 10,000 tax credit, which is translating to about $1,500 saving there as well. And also at the land credit tax, you save 4,000 if in outside Toronto, even in Toronto, instead of Toronto, you got another 4,475, right? So in total make a $8,475 saving there. And now, if you become Mark Carney here, so if you're buying a brand new house, right, for under $1 million, you save the GSC, which is a $50,000 saving. That's a big one, right? He talked about that during the election, and just I think 3 days ago, he doubled on it, and he announced it, the platform, and also he said the between 1 billion to 1.5 also going to reduce the tax, right? Reduce the tax. So that means more than $50,000 saving right there, right? So I think all kind of government, they recognize helping the first-time buyers.
Okay, now here's the question. How many single detached homes are under $1 million?
Right now, it's pretty much nothing.
So it's basically, there's a lot of that conversation is actually more geared towards condominiums.
For Toronto, pretty much. For Toronto, we're looking at the condominium.
And the amazing thing is that a lot of people looked at first-time home buyers, and in their mind, they're thinking of a single detached home.
Yeah.
But actually, in Toronto, the first-time home buyers is actually not a single detached home. It actually could very well be a condominium. Yeah. And for under $1 million, you could definitely get a two-bed.
Yeah, well, that's exactly the thing right now. I said I was a little bit surprised, but also not surprised about what's going on in the market. Condo market right now is in a much worse shape than freehold right now. The reason is obvious because I said only about 20% Canadian buyer are investor, 80% either to upgrade or new first-time new buyer. But Toronto condo market was traditionally 70% investor and 30% people buying for their own. And now that's 30% people, they're keeping our market stable.
Yeah.
Right? And imagine only 30%. Yeah, we do see market really bad. But if you really look at it, why we feel bad? Because if you look at the sale to new listing ratio, so we have so many listings and we have a very high active listing,
But the price is stable.
stable, and also the number of sales also stable, right? So the ratio between the sale and the new listing is disaster. Right now it's about 20 to 30%. But if you look at the number of sales month after month, like it's kind of stable, yeah, it kind of stayed there, right? And that means there's still people buying. It's more difficult. Out of 5 condo, only 1 sold today because the inventory is so high. But there's still one person buying, right?
Transaction.
Yeah. So that those people, like for example, my personal experiences, I do a lot of resale as well. I do both pre-condo and resale. All my listing condo recently I sold are always a buyer for themselves. Most of them are first time buyer, right? And I think the market dynamic will change, and that's the one thing I always tell an agent or client. I say, don't just look at what happened today. What happened today, it's caused by what happened 5 years ago, right? And there's so many condo sold in pre-con. And last year we got 40,000 unit delivered, which we have never seen that high. This year about half of that, but 20,000. And even 20,000 sounds like half of that, but that's almost like the second highest ever. So last year was high, it's the second highest, right? But by next year will be another high, 10,000. And that will be market average. So if you look at the
And the year after that,
and that is another half, and then we'll
it's
kind of
going to be even less.
yeah, even less than that, and at 2027 will be almost the same level as 2017, which is previously was kind of the lowest for the last 20 years. And after that, that's the more interesting one. 2028, 2029, and 2030, we're gonna have things like probably we'll see less than 5,000, but that's a wow because it's gonna be extremely low, right? We're gonna
see sub 5,000 mark.
Yeah,
and it has been close. Like we look at numbers, so that 35 years ago, that we are maintaining that number in terms of completions for condominiums.
Exactly. We haven't seen this for 35 years, but before only 1 year like that. If you look at history, whenever the 1 year delivery low, usually just 1 year. We're gonna have a 3 year after year, right? And last time we had the low, which is not that low, not 5,000 low, but it was around 2017, and we all see what happened in 2017.
Yeah.
The ratio went up 50% almost in many beauty, right? So that's the thing. I think when people, if I'm a first time buyer, I'm buying today. If you ask me, is it a bottom? Maybe not. Maybe next year or the year after year, maybe it's going to keep going down. But definitely we're close to the bottom. And once the market starts coming back, I'm not saying 100%, but it's possible that it's coming back very fast. And like what we think in 2020, during the COVID, the condo market was very bad, before November.
And all shut down.
Yeah, and then just December, out of blue, the market just start buying, and we had the highest inventory ever at that time, 8,500 condo for sale, and we dropped down to less than 4,000 in 2 months, right? So yeah, when you look at the inventory today, 12,000 is scary, right? People say, well, everything is high, but don't forget, like that 70% investor, they're sitting on the sideline, and once they start realize that, maybe market won't come back. Maybe in the next 2 years, we're going to see price appreciation. These 70% come back pretty fast. You don't need that 70% all come back. Just half of the 35% come back. They're going to have a huge impact on this market, right? So that's why I always say, just don't always look at the negative part. If you're an investor, you have to look ahead, right? You cannot just only focusing on today.
Right. So Truman, so basically for the first-time home buyers or people who are buying for themselves, they look at through the lens: do I really need this? Does this location offers me the things that I want for my family. And as my first home, maybe a condominium is sufficient. In fact, that's all I could afford. I think that is a good stepping stone for the next move and then the next move. So definitely that is the
It's really important because, yeah, of course, we want to have like, oh, just to buy one house and that's our perfect dream house and never move out until
that's our dream.
Yeah, but that never happened, right? Not because the price, people say, oh, because the price so out of touch today, people couldn't afford. But it's back to like I remember back to like before 2010, I couldn't afford. When I tried to buy my first house, right? I was always looking at the condo, right? Because it's like a gateway, right? Yeah, we know that it's not for permanent, but it's a gateway to help us to at least we save for the down payment and have a discipline. And also very important, we force ourselves have a discipline to saving. Because otherwise, if you don't buy anything, you say, okay, the house is out of touch. I don't want a condo. I want to buy a house, but I couldn't afford it. Most likely, you're gonna spend money on vacation, on your electronic, on your new iPhone every year, right? It's always good to have that discipline. Even after you bought it, the price didn't go up, but you are building the equity of yourself, right? I think that's also people always overlook on that fact. And I see whoever my friend at the time they bought it like before, they all seem expensive, but they really stretch themselves. Life never comfortable. Never buying after you bought the real estate you feel comfortable, right? And people always assume that now it's too expensive, but people would lucky before. But even people before we bought something, we always feel it was kind of like a downgrade of our kind of daily expense.
You always feel that you are pushing to the gray areas to the limits.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to make yourself to do something that you're not comfortable with because of saving.
Yeah.
Saving is I want to spend, I want to buy that iPhone, I want to buy this and buy that, but I have to restrain. And when I keep restraining, then I see the flip side of that is that I'm building equity.
Yeah.
Even though maybe condo, but I'm building equity. I'm building another launching pad for me to step for my next move. That is beautiful. Now, let's turn the conversation to smart sizing.
Mm-hmm.
I think, lately I see a lot more conversations on the social media, on the news, talking about that's why baby boomers.
Mm-hmm.
The baby boomers are coming to realize that they are sitting on equity, and more important than equity is that they're finding themselves in a situation where they actually want to change the lifestyle.
Mm-hmm.
They want to travel more. They want less home to take care of, because as they start to realize that it is not how big of a home that defines you, it's something else.
Yeah.
It's your ability to go and connect with your world, with your community, to visit the places that you've never visited because you've been saving all these years. Now's the time to do it while you can still walk and run and go on the tours and do everything. And so the terms smart sizing and downsizing have always been starting to show more and more now. Are you and your team working with more buyers in that category?
Yeah, and interestingly, before I always say people don't need downsizing until they're like 70 years old, right? Because even you're 60 something, you think you're okay living with your the double garage attached. But I did notice that in the recent years, in the last 2-3 years, I see more and more people that in their 50s, they're downsizing. Right? They're like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna just sell this thing. I wanna not boomer, but much younger than boomer, and they're downsizing. They're just, they say like, you know what? I just wanna sell my big house, maybe move to a smart townhouse, or some people buy condos, right? It's really they feel like that fit their lifestyle better, and also the big trend, even the young generation, right? I do see the changing. I always tell people say when you invest in real estate. This is not like a stock, right? It go up and down every day, right? This is like you have to think for more long term. And even in stock, if you invest in stock market long term, we have something called a generational trade. So basically you trade on generation. Let's say you're a boomer and you buy things like a real estate stock or like say oil and gas and things like that, or manufacturing, you probably make good money. But later on, you're probably better off, let's say IBM, like computer electronics, and or like say home products like PNG, like Procter Gamble. But later on, for the for like a kind of Gen Y, where we're kind of buying like technology stuff, like think about all these social media company, Google, things like that, Apple, right? So I have a generational trait, but I think going forward for real estate, we have exactly the same thing. I think going forward, Gen Z, they will be the major buyer force in the for like I think next 5 to 10 years. They have a complete different mindset. Even that, because I'm Gen Y, I'm the beginning of Gen Y, right? But I'm have different, have a totally different, because we very good at that technology, but we're not technology native, right? So the Gen Z, they're technology native because when they're born, they're surrounded by technology. Yeah, you're right. And I was telling the joke. There was a TikTok video, and they were talking about that the Gen Y would like to play video game. And for Gen Z, they like to watch someone play video games. So look at those podcasts, someone play video game, and they're watching it. But for Gen Alpha, they're watching people watching the game. So there's some business they're watching people commenting on other people playing game, and they're commenting on that people, and that was Gen Alpha watching, right? So, but that's true. That it's not a joke, but that's a really true. I look at how my son love on the internet. And the reason I'm talking about that is I do notice that the trend for real estate changing. Because think about, from my perspective, I always tell people that don't buy big law with the old house, right? I've been talking about that for the last, I don't know, like 5 years, more than 5 years. And it's true. Now you look at today, whoever, if you 2017, you bought like a big law with a smaller old bungalow versus someone for the same amount of money, they just bought like a townhouse, a newer townhouse. Who makes more money today? Which one appreciates more? You can see the townhouse actually make more because they're newer house. But now they're trying to even change more. I was surprised, like for example, Unionville, not far from here, right by the Unionville condo. When they sold the pre-con at the time, the traditional townhouse, which you have a drive in the front, you have a backyard in the back, it costs more because your land takes more. You need a deeper lot. And the next level, the cheaper one, was a rarely because they have a 2-car garage in the behind. You do not have a backyard. We always talk about the traditional will be worth more than the rarely first because a lot of bigger, and also some people don't like so many stairs. Because that was a 3-story, the 2-story. But today, if you look at the resale value at Unionville right now, you're actually surprised to see that the 3-story rarely sell more. I personally, I couldn't believe it, but that's the reality. Because the younger people, they don't want backyard. They want a more than looking, right? They don't need a backyard.
Okay, what is the average price point for traditional versus the rear lanes?
Right now, I see it in that area, right? I think when they bought the pre-con, I think traditional probably at least 50,000 to 100,000 more when you bought it. But now it's about the other way, about 50,000, $100,000 more if the people pay in that neighborhood for the 3-story rarely, right? So that's how the trend is changing. And I have VR. Like I have VR headset, myself. I used it for years, and I love it. I always on some site that I have this in my headset, and I travel. So there's people go around the world. They making those videos. They walking on the street. Well, you can say what's the difference between YouTube videos, but the difference that is, I can look around. I decide what I want to look instead of just going with their camera, right? And there was one lady, she went to the Versailles, in France, and she was talking in the behind in narration. She talking about like the all the king and royal family, the story. But meanwhile, I was just looking around while she talking.
You were like a tourist.
I was a tourist, right?
Tourist.
And the funny thing is but after that, And then it actually make me want to go this place even more, right? And I actually go there, feel wow. Like last year I went to Tokyo, and but I keep watching these people walking around Tokyo, like different area, the Shinjuku, the Shibuya, Akihabara, right? I see that all the time, and I went there. I said, wow, I know this place, I know this shop because I haven't seen it on here already, right? So for me, let's say if you ask me today, do I need a huge house, big living room? When was the last? I don't know. Ask on my client. When the last time you have your friend come to your house, sit in the backyard barbecue, or when the last time you use a dining room, right? Every day you're eating in your breakfast area.
Yeah.
When the last time you have dining room? I don't have the sofa. I bought my house 7 years ago. I still don't have the sofa in my living room because nobody comes. Right? Nobody could. Right? I don't need that, right? So I think that the lifestyle over time, the technology is changing everything, right? When Facebook, the Meta talked about, the metaverse a few years ago, they lost big money so far. But I think that because the time is not right.
Yeah.
But not year after year, I do see, because by myself, I use this VR all the time, watching, and people creating more and more content. And I'm a Gen Y. Imagine Gen Z, Gen Alpha, their preferences is different, right? When I was younger, I go with my friend, I go karaoke, and in China, we're seeing everyone try to fight for that microphone, and you know that you understand what I'm talking about. Everyone try to block other people, right?
To the console.
And these are the younger people, what they do in China, they still go karaoke. Well, they do less, but when they go, nobody singing. Everyone has their cell phone, and they all play like video games together. That's the change, right? And that's why I think there's a lot of people question why people still need condo today. They think that that's not a product for everyone. But I think going forward, that seems to be the because everything in the city, everyone lives in the city, and the city just become more and more expensive. We talk about Toronto expensive, but if you really look at the city around the globe, it's actually there's many cities have a way more expensive condo.
We're actually relatively cheap globally. And I just want to pick up on the idea about what you have cited about the Union Village. Is that one of the phenomena that I've heard about is that if you buy things and you compare the traditional towns versus the rear lanes ones, is that the rear lane, because they start off, there's a price advantage. It was cheaper than the traditional.
Yes.
And then so as a result, as the market keeps growing and maturing, and the people wanted that area, they wanted to be there, and just to drop a note, there will be an elementary school in South Glen, so that whole area is going to be a really good homes and neighborhoods for many families, and a lot of people would want to be there. And as a result, the rear lanes, they have more room in terms of their affordability for people who say, hey, I'm looking at it not as a speculator, I'm looking at say, I want to buy in exchange for the neighborhood. I want to buy and secure my place. I want to get that postal code. I want to get that right to be in that school zone. I want all of that. And it happens that the rear lanes is actually more affordable now. So there's more people who will bid up for it. So the rate of increase actually outstrips the traditional.
Yeah.
And that is the same analogy that Incan, when they came over to Toronto and they bought this piece of property, the Unionville, to develop on, it's because they look at the nearby surroundings.
Yeah.
There's nothing under $1 million.
Yeah. Exactly.
And then what the founders said is that there's nothing under $1 million. I don't care when it is, because I'm looking at real estate for the long term. I'm looking for a location where I can build homes for families, not just to speculate, but for families to move in, for people to go in there, and then that is a great place. So what we have done at the Unionville is that we created actually bifurcate the target lines. We have the less than a mil, maybe a 1+ den, a 2-bedroom under $1 million. But we also have the people who are looking at downsize, who are in homes that's over 2,000 square feet, 25, 3,000 square feet, and they want to go down. And they exactly for a reason they said they're within their house. There are a lot of places that they never use.
Yeah.
It's only for storage.
Yeah.
And they started to realize that the storage, that space becomes a burden. Whatever lifestyle that they have chose to say, for my next phase of my life, my journey, I want to incorporate more travel. I want to incorporate this. I want to incorporate that. And I definitely saw that. And what we've seen is that people say, hey, I want a bigger space that is more than just a couple hundred square feet. So that's why we created a brand new collection called the Grand Collection. And that is brand because it is exactly fitting with what we call the smart sizing. Is that I look at my lifestyle, say I need a nice kitchen, I need a nice bedroom. I want to be able to put in a king size bed. I want to be able to go into my bedroom and don't feel cramped. Yeah. And so we take a space of over 1,000 square feet that could have been easily laid out as a 3-bedroom plus a den, and we instead only created 2 bedrooms with a nice gorgeous kitchen, a nice gorgeous living room. And that is the release of Grand Collection. And that is in direct response to what we've seen for, I guess it's the demographic shift, or you said generational.
Yeah.
With every generation, there is going to be something else. And we are capitalizing on these two, the Gen Zs and the Alphas. They will, at some later point in life, they will have a family. And when you have a family, as yourself, education becomes part of the conversation.
Yeah.
For those who are smart sizing, they say, I want to be in a setting where I could go travel and don't have to worry about it. The beauty of the condominium is that whether I'm home or not, no one knows. When you go on a vacation, you shut the door and no one knows that Truman have left and are in France right now. Or you go to Portugal, or you go to Italy. You go to travel all around and no one knows that you're not home. It's that being anonymous, having that security, having that service, having that ability to live beyond your 4 walls, to really enjoy all the things that community has to offer you, that becomes a relief from the burden of, I have a 3,000 square feet home that I may not be cutting the lawn, but I have to organize and make sure my lawn gets careful. Yeah. I have to make sure that all these things are, and most importantly, one here is that I have to make sure that I feel and people feel that I'm living there.
Yeah.
Boy, that's a big word. And so we find ourselves right now really at that crossroads of embarking and really providing the next chapter in a lot of people's lives. And I remember one of our buyers at the Unionville, he's from Hong Kong. So originally, he's a Canadian, originally studied here, and went back to Hong Kong to work. And I think there are many people like that. And he came back. We repatriated back to Toronto now. And what he was looking for is a condominium. And I remember I asked him to say, don't him and his wife want to be in a 2-car garage? Won't you want that land? And he says, no, I'm done with that. I actually want something else there. And it's exactly the stuff that I've just talked about. I want that freedom. I want that ability to say, if I want to go back to Hong Kong, I want to go to China, I want to go to Southeast Asia, I want to travel anywhere. I want to be more places that I don't have to worry about where my mind is.
Yeah. I do see that trend, myself, I do see a lot of my clients, even they're younger, and they just want to cap a condo here because some people, they come and go, they live in Canada, but also live in China, and they go back and forth. They cannot keep a house there. Before they can, because the price went up, right? And the land value goes up, they feel like, even it's like inconvenient, but I have a good price appreciation. But why in the last few years I've seen the trend different? Because now people realize that by holding a piece of land, they no longer give you that price appreciation, and actually even worse, you spend a lot of the the maintenance on it. You spend a lot of the cost to keep that place. And if you rent it out, the rent it doesn't cover anything, right? So you just kind of have a big land there. in contrast, if I have a condo, I rent out the condo. At least the rent price ratio is better, right? I lose some money, but I don't lose that much money, right? And I do see my client they start selling they invest on their kind of the freehold investment and start buying. And I think that's the reason, because if you look at it, right, even we don't talk about Gen Z, Gen Alpha, the generation change. Just look at global. There's many countries the condo actually costs a lot more than a house. Like one good example is Tokyo, right? If you go Tokyo, the the detached home, the small detached home is actually worth less than the tower, right? The big, tower, right? Because the location, people care about location, and also it's more kind of the kind of social status, right? You need more prestigious to live in a tower like that, right? And also traditionally you do see that market segment, the price appreciation kind of goes very steady. And China the same, right? You go China, I think most people living in condo, not living in a house. And even people try to buy a house, like my parents bought a house when they were younger, they was managing that really well, but as the time goes by, these 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 townhouses they deteriorate faster than the tower because of just less maintenance, right? And they feel that that's kind of a burden, and they start moving back to a condo apartment, especially after they come here back and forth between Canada and China. Is what you would have to move in apartment, right? So I think as long as the law in Toronto, like the freehold, doesn't appreciate that faster than before, people start really think about, okay, house is not just for investment. House is for a home where I live. What the need I have, right? What the need I have, right? Just last week, my dad suddenly told me, hey, you know what? I think we should just buy a bigger house or something. I said, no. I said, we never stay home, take care of the house. My parents did it, right? Like my mom and dad were taking care of our house, right? And why you want to buy something bigger? What if when they move back, are you gonna do all these housework? While we talk about that, and in the evening we met one of our clients, and my client just sold a big house, in Toronto, and they're downsizing, and they're young, they're not old, they're young. And during that conversation, we had a dinner, and they said, yeah, you know what? I'm so happy to sell this house because he said, like, I spent so much time on maintaining this house, right? And like, oh, every week they have to clean the leaves during the autumn, right? Things like that. And I look at my wife and say, well, do you still want to move or you want to move to a condo, right? She said, yeah, and maybe, later on when our parents left, maybe we should just move to condo. Right?
I think definitely it is different phases, and whatever is right for those phases. But I think the critical element is that people are examining and considering all the options a lot more closely now.
Yeah.
And I think the condominiums nowadays are complementing the lifestyle that a lot of people are looking for.
Yeah.
It's no longer just having gym and a party room, but the different condos have different flavor and different strength as to what they offer. I think that's unique. Last question. Let's talk about AI.
Yeah.
Do you use AI?
Why I use it?
How many times do you use AI in a day?
I pretty much I use AI all the time now. Like whenever I use AI, whenever I have a question, I sometimes I just have something in my mind. Hey, what? And I like to explore, right? So I always ask AI question. I do use AI to help me. Like these days, like for example, if people send me a document, right? Before, like for example, condo stackable. Before let's say someone gave you that and asked you, hey, what the path policy in this building? What the limitation for the path? What I do? A couple hundred pages. I go through and try to find the section that talk about path. And sometimes in the first round it doesn't find it. And it's hard to find, right? Imagine you got a couple hundred pages, you have like one paragraph.
You should call me.
Yeah. And then now what I did, I just load in the notebook LMM, right? And I upload that in PDF format, and I ask the AI, I said, what's the policy for the pack? And right away, they tell me exactly what they're talking about, and then they show me, I click a link, I see the section of the original document, what that is. They really transform how we work, right? And that's just the one example, and there's a lot more. Actually, I'm going China by the end of this month, and the reason for that is just one company, they're AI company, they're in real estate. They invite me to go there and visit them and see what they have, what's new, right?
Oh,
So
amazing.
yeah, I think this is the market that really transforming, and it's having a big impact to it.
Okay, I'm gonna book you when you come back from your trip to come back and sit down, and I want to learn from you as to what's going on.
Yeah.
Again, this has been super amazing, able to talk to you, learn from you, and again, thank you for Incan at Unionville for providing us with this venue to talk and just share all things real estate related. Thank you again, Truman. Thank you very much.
That's